Okay, we're going to begin. Tonight we're going to begin with Perek Bet of Kohelet, the second chapter. Before we begin to read from it, I want to give you an introduction about something that we don't really fully understand. And that is something that we call simcha, happiness, something that we associate with that which is good. And here, we're about to see that he actually discounts even that. And some of what we will see perhaps may be depressing to hear. So I wanted to let you know before we begin that in reality, the entire creation is all good. Hashem is good, and that which he made is good. It is the human beings, as a result of their free will, who are capable of damaging, are capable of hurting themselves and others, are capable of ruining things, misusing, mismanaging. So everything really, even what Shlomo Melech says is not so good, it's not because it's not good in its essence. Everything Hashem made is good. Everything is good and perfect. But we don't know how to use it. We don't know how to use it right. And because of that, things get out of hand, out of control, and turn out to be not so good. Okay, so that's a very important point to remember as we read what he has to say. A quick introduction about simcha. Is simcha good or bad? Well, we just said everything is good, especially that which we recognize as simcha. What could be bad about simcha? Simcha, joy, happiness, is something that everybody wants. It's something that the Torah speaks about. It is definitely important in many, many ways. However, there's different kinds of smachot, different kinds of joy, different kinds of things that give us joy. The real simcha, that is the ultimate simcha of all, that brings us true joy, true in mirchaot, in quotes, joy, is a spiritual type of simcha. It lasts longer, it is more real. And not only is it more real, there's actually a mitzvah to gladden the hearts of others. There's a story in the Gemara of somebody wanting to know from Elyahu Navi, can you tell me who in this neighborhood has a Chelek Olam Haba, who has a share to the world to come? So Elyahu Navi tells him, come, I'll show you an example of an individual who has a Chelek Olam Haba. So he thought he was going to show him a big tzaddik, a big rabbi, and he took him to a wedding hall where he showed him two individuals, I believe it was, making the Hatan v'Kala and the guests happy. Mevadeh hacherim, making jokes, laughing, dancing, doing whatever it is to raise people's spirits. He says, you see these people? And they were simple people, not so learned perhaps, but they were doing something very, very special. Because these two individuals are an example of individuals who have a chelek, a share to the world to come. So we see the benefits of simcha, we see that it's a good thing. But if it is l'shem shamayim, if it's spiritual in nature. For those of you who are not familiar with Hasidut, the Baal Shem Tov, it's important to know that a little over 250 years ago, the Baal Shem Tov came into this world according to our tradition of the Hasidut, to bring more simcha into Jewry. Jewish people were oppressed in this long diaspora. They were persecuted generation after generation in many parts of the world. The Baal Shem Tov was born at a time which came at the heels of the Gzerot Tach V'Tat, of all the terrible decrees of 1648 and 1649, where hundreds of thousands of Jews were wiped out by Khmelnytsky and his gangs in Poland and the Ukraine. It is coming on the heels of Shabtai Tzvi, the false Messiah, that supposedly got people's hopes up and then he let them down, especially when he converted to Islam. Yeah. So we're talking about a very volatile time in Jewish history. And it is apparent for those who analyze Hasidut. It's not just a biased opinion by some Hasid that tells us this is the reason why he came. He was definitely a great neshama, a great soul, a big tzaddik, who accomplished a great deal. But other than his own accomplishments, a tremendous movement was born, the movement of the Hasidut. Now, there was always a term called Hasid. Hasid, a true servant, a true devoted servant of God, that existed at all time. It is a tremendous high level, a spiritual level for someone to reach, that he's a Hasid. And one way of understanding Hasid is that he does not do things because he's obligated to do, he does them because he wants to do. Imagine somebody who does not wait for the poor man to come to him. He looks for the poor to give. So Hasid always does lifni mishurat hadin, beyond the call of duty. That was the regular term of Hasid. But this group called Hasidim, who eventually, of course, evolved with their own Rebbe or master and guide, each one in somewhat of a different way, different emphasis, different style. What they all had in common was to restore the service of Hashem in a way that has not existed for a long, long time. And that is, Ivdut Hashem b'simcha, serve Hashem with tremendous joy and happiness. Do the mitzvah for the real purpose. Don't do it because of routine. When you learn Torah, enjoy it, be happy about it. Don't just learn it because you have to learn it. There was a certain dryness in the life of Jews, and it's understood. The part of it has to do with the galut. Jews were getting into some sort of routine, and not a very healthy routine. On top of that, you have something that is about to happen in Jewry, in the world, that is going to be very, very dangerous to Jewry, and that is the reform movement, which is not born yet, but the seeds are already planted through the emancipation in Europe, the movement of emancipation, which is a non-Jewish movement, where countries are becoming free, the church is losing power, and science is creeping in. And just there's a lot of changes happening in Europe under the surface that are not very visible yet in the early and mid-1700s. And all of that is going to cause a tremendous rift in Jewry. It's going to make things more secular. And there's danger of assimilation and intermarriage, etc., etc. This is more or less the time frame where the Hasidut takes root. Does not take root all over the world, it's mostly Eastern Europe. It's interesting to note that Sephardim didn't have that kind of a problem, not in the same way as some of the Ashkenazim did. Sephardim were more into Kabbalah. There was more tmimut amongst them, tmimut meaning that they were in some ways very genuine, very simple, right? And they had different kinds of challenges than the Ashkenazim had. And because of that, they did not suffer from the same ills, not the exact same ills as the Ashkenazim did. So you don't see Hasidut by Sephardim. Nevertheless, you see great, of course, tzaddikim and great leaders amongst them too. So this Hasidim put the most important emphasis on simcha, elevate the spirit, even if it means drinking a little bit more vodka to become happy. Yeah, drink, but not, don't overdo it. Achdut, unity, chaverut, togetherness. And how do we keep this all going? How do we encourage the Jew, other than just a little bit of vodka? What's the secret behind this movement, other than saying that this is what we preach? Part of the secret had to do with learning Hasidut. Hasidut is Kabbalah on a very, very simple, straightforward level that average human beings can understand and relate to. So it's bringing into the Torah, into the learning, not a new interpretation necessarily, but a deeper interpretation, an interpretation that makes sense in a way that even those things that are complex to understand, difficult topics like pain and suffering, all of a sudden are easier to relate to. So here you have a Jew who may be suffering a tremendous loss, who may be losing his job, losing his parnassah, his livelihood, because this Polish goy is kicking him out for not paying the rent, poor Jew. How does he deal with it? And not to lose hope and to have your spirits up, even at times of difficulty, is not an easy job. unless you have some anchor. So the Hasidut, the Kabbalah, the Simcha that is produced as a result of all that did reduce, definitely, no doubt in the world, did diminish a great deal of the pain that Jews were feeling. It revived them, it gave them more hope, it brought them together, and more important than all, it maintained their religious level. And for some, not only did it maintain their religious level, it also elevated them even to higher, greater heights that they would not have gotten to had they just remained good, observant Jews. Through the learning of the Kabbalah, seeing things in a different light, striving to perfect oneself, in one's character, all of that, the Hasidut emphasized all of that, but the key here was, do it b'simcha, do it with joy. That was an important key. So we see that this type of a joy, this type of Avodat Hashem is obviously retzuya. It is not only welcome, it is desired, it is healthy. And the Torah actually is upset that you will be punished if you had all the good in the world, you were blessed, and you did not serve Hashem with a happy, spirit. You have everything. The more so that you have to serve Hashem. So the Torah is upset if a Jew just does things out of routine. He's not so eager. He's not overjoyed to do the mitzvot. And we see that Simcha was also an important condition for having nevuah, to be a prophet. A prophet could not be sad or depressed. That is why they had musical instruments, stimulating them and helping them reach a level of happiness, even though it was momentary. Nevertheless, that was what was needed to be able to derive nevuah from Shamayim. So, from all this, we see that there's no doubt in the world that, in general terms, Simcha, especially Simcha Ruchanit, the spiritual type of Simcha, which involves a greater connection to Hashem, a greater awareness, and a certain level of spiritual elevation, that this is definitely something good. The Simcha that Shlomo Melech, however, is going to talk about, that is not so good, or that is not so unique and so special, is the Simcha, the happiness or the joy that is derived from that which is physical and material. In Perek Aleph, we spoke about the vanity in the world, the tremendous amount of vanities. Shlomo Melech, therefore, right now is in the quest, is investigating, where should I focus my efforts? What is really good? What's not such a good idea? He's going to examine Simcha and Holelut, laughter, joy, fun, and he's going to examine Chokhmah. In other words, because after all, he did tell us towards the end of Perek Aleph that even something as good as Chokhmah, which he was gifted with, that he asked for, and that there's no doubt there's a lot of good to it too, even that, he said, brought him machov. It brought him frustration and pain. To know certain things, sometimes you're better off not knowing. So even that, he says, so what am I going to do now? Let me analyze deeply Simcha. Enjoy yourself, like they say, you only live once, even though we know it's not true. Have a good time. You owe it to yourself, like they go and say, go on vacation, right? And derive Simcha and joy and happiness and fun from all there is in this world to be able to get these things. Okay, so let's begin. I'm going to read and then I'm going to explain. Amarti ani belibi lecha na anasecha besimcha. I said to myself, you know what, let's try it out. Let's try to enjoy Simcha. Let's try to, anasecha means to involve myself, to immerse myself in Simcha, or ebetov, and see all the good there is in the world to enjoy. And I've come to the conclusion, and he will explain why later, Gam hu hevel. Even this is vanities. All the Simcha in the world that you can imagine is vanity. Why? Why is it vanity? Before we go on and see the Pesukim, what is he talking about? How could Simcha be vanity? Obviously, there's a lot of pain in the world. There's a lot of sorrow. There's a lot of grief. And because of that, Shlomo Melech is saying maybe we have to focus on that which is good and positive and pursue that so we can get away from all the pain, so we can get away from all the trouble that there is. Perhaps this is where we have to invest our time and efforts. Enjoy, have fun, buy yourself the latest car, if you can afford it, right? And apparently he says there's something wrong with that too. He didn't tell us what yet, but that's what he's telling us. What is it? What's wrong? So before we see what's wrong, we need to keep something else in mind. That the rabbis tell us that all the good things in the world that bring us joy, not spiritual joy, physical and material joy, are actually good too. They're good too. Rabbis tell us that the simcha has in its nature the ability larhiv et libo v'da'ato shel adam. There are certain things in joy, certain ingredients that the joy produces in one's heart and mind that are very healthy and beneficial. They expand, marhivim libo da'ato shel adam. They expand his heart and his mind. That means they give him a certain tranquility, a certain ease, a certain peace of mind. I mean, there's definitely a lot of benefits to this thing. But what he's really telling us is not that it's completely wrong. He didn't say sheker, he didn't say ra, he didn't use those words. He says hevel. Why hevel? Because even that which is good, don't be misled to think that that's the ikar in life, that that's the most important thing in life. Because in the end, what is really important is you have to find your way to olam haba, to the world to come. This simcha will not necessarily lead there. If it will not lead there, it cannot be the ikar, it cannot be the most important thing. And there's also the danger that too much of a simcha, too much of a good thing, tasiach da'ato shel adam, it will distract him completely. Somebody recently got on the news. I don't want to say his name for some reason. Anyway, they interviewed him. What do you say about what's going on in Libya? And so he gave his opinion, talked about the pros and cons, how to do it, how not to do it. Then he said one true thing, which I agreed with. He says, but you know what? It's unfortunate that this thing in Libya is a distraction from the real problem in the world today, which is Iran. That was a very good point that he made. It's too bad that this kind of a thing, what it will do is distract the world from the real problem, the real troublemaker, the real source of trouble, and that is in the Gulf. And that's what happens over here. Simcha may be good, may be actually very good at times. Just a minute. Change the battery here. Okay, so we'll continue. So the problem with this thing happening in Libya is that in the end it is a distraction from the real problem, the source of all problems. So simcha, as good as it may be, if one pursues it too much, one overemphasizes it, it could distract him from focusing on what he's supposed to focus. Otherwise, there's nothing really wrong with it. Rabbis tell us, Bait na'eh, kelim na'im, v'isha na'ah, marchivim et da'ato shel adam. A beautiful home, beautiful furniture, and a beautiful wife, they actually marchivim et da'ato. They actually expand his mind. In other words, they give a good feeling. It's a comfortable feeling. It does something to a person, that he has this tranquility, that he's surrounded with beautiful things. But this is what a person should pursue. So Kohelet is going to warn us that as good as these things may be, and I try them out myself, that's not the ikar, and therefore, since it's not the ikar, don't pursue it. Now, life is short. And since life is short, we cannot do everything. We cannot look into everything. We cannot test everything. And we will not be able to acquire everything. So the question will ultimately be, and that is what Shlomo Melech is about to investigate, what should I try to acquire? What is the most important thing in life? Where should I put most of my time and effort? So it continues. He says like this, Lishok amarti mehulal, ulesimcha mazo osa. When it comes to laughter, lishok, I said mehulal. Now mehulal either could be, the word means like mahul, something which is diluted. Laughter or joy is not something real because it's diluted with pain. And I'll explain that soon. Or it could mean that mahul, he's saying like this, laughter in the end is a big joke. Mehulal is like holelu too. It's just a big joke. It's not something substantial. And same thing with simcha, that we said is okay, but simcha mazu osa, what will it do for me in the long term? It's so short term. It's something that is passing. So what will I gain from it in the end? So we're talking about joy, talking about simcha, nothing wrong with them, but in the end, what will I gain from them if they're short-lived? Why are they short-lived? They are short-lived for one important reason, that nobody can escape tsar in his life. Almost. Some people more, some people less. Life is turbulent. There's a lot of pain. People die. At some point, people who are very dear to us will leave this world. You cannot avoid it. Unless you go before them. Maybe, but that's not good either. We will be unfortunately participating in funerals and eulogies and going to a house of the mourning, of the mourner. There are all kinds of things that will be very disturbing to us. Tragedies, just like now in Yerushalayim. And elsewhere in the world, things that we will read and hear about that will bring us pain and sorrow. So the schok is mahul, as Rashi explains, that he's talking about a mahul. A mahul meaning it is diluted. It is not real. It does not last. And as far as the simcha also, what benefit do I have from something that does not last forever? There's a nice mashal that's brought down. Imagine somebody who he's happy for some reason, but he owes a lot of money to a lot of people, and these people are suing him in court, bothering him, reminding him. Is he ever going to be very, very happy? No, because of all his debts, because of all his chovot that he has, he can never be truly happy. So momentarily, yes, perhaps something good and happened in his life. A child was born, great, bar mitzvah, wedding. Yeah. But before you know it, the next day, he has to face the troubles. And there may be new troubles too. So it's mahul, it's diluted. It's not something that really lasts for too long. And the rabbis tell us that is the situation with all of us today. Not just with this individual, for example, who has his own personal problems, with all of us ever since the Churban Bet HaMikdash. Ever since the destruction of the temple, there's no true happiness in the world. There's quite a few halachot that we cannot do certain things because we don't have a Bet HaMikdash. We cannot be over happy. And that is why at the happiest day of our life, underneath the chuppah, we break a glass. Zecher l'Churban Bet HaMikdash. Because the happiness is not complete. So long as we don't have our own home in Yerushalayim, how can we be happier if Hashem is not happy? You see? So we demonstrate that. We should not forget about it. Tishkachech Yerushalayim, tishkach yemini, chaz v'shalom. How could I forget? So we are reminded from time to time that the happiness is not complete. Sometimes, unfortunately, it becomes very, very sad. A simcha that began as a simcha ends up as evel, as mourning. For example, there's a story that's told, I think, in the Midrash, of a father who invited the big rabbis in town to come celebrate with him and his son for Sheva Berachot. He had just recently gotten married. The father asks his son, I want to honor the rabbis with good wine. He had a wine cellar. Please go to the wine cellar and get me some good wine. The son doesn't come back. The father goes searching for them. He was bit by a poisonous snake. He died. The hatan. He went up to the rabbis, didn't say anything. Let them enjoy the meal. At the end of the meal, he says, you came to make birchat chatanim. Now you're going to have to make birchat avelim. What do you say for the mourners? we forget, but these stories have happened. Many such or similar stories have happened. Haven't you heard of these terrible tragedies of a Chatam and Kala on their way to the wedding hall being killed in a car accident? Yeah. Or on the way back? And if it's not them, it's the in-laws or the parents. It happens in Israel. It happens everywhere. It has happened.
It's happened Chatam and Kala, and it's clubs, everything.
Sure. All of these things have happened. We just have a short memory. Baruch Hashem that we have a short memory for these things, because who could live on with this kind of pain? So you have a simcha which is not complete. You have eved, you have tzar, you have pain, either at the same time or following it. It's short-lived. So therefore, Shlomo Melech is going to tell us that there's not that much good that is going to come from pursuing simcha. Actually, if you don't know how to use it right, there's going to be more harm from it, from overdoing laughter and joy and fun and all these things. In the very end, all of simcha and joy, what it does accomplish is what we call in Hebrew briha mi'ametziut. It's an escape from reality. The moment a person is happy, what that happiness is really doing for him, which is not bad, but it's something that we have to realize. It is an escape from reality. I'd like to call it a painkiller. There's painkillers. So simcha that came about not through drugs, which is a real escape, not through alcohol, which is an escape, but real simcha, which is good, which Baruch Hashem sends us, and may He send us many smachot.
Amen.
הרבי מלובביץ' אומר שמי ששמחה פורצת גדרות, זאת אומרת, אם יש לך גזירה רעה, אם אתה תשמח, אז ימחוק את ה...
Right. So we're saying, אנחנו אומרים שהשמחה היא טובה, it's good, but it's in some ways not so good. It all depends what simcha we're talking about. Okay? אני לא מדבר פה על שמחה רוחנית. I'm talking about a regular type of simcha that comes about that serves more as a painkiller, as an escape from reality. And because of that, it dulls the pain, and it will also, as a result of dulling the pain, sometimes, if it's not a simcha ruchanit, not a spiritual kind of simcha, אני אסביר את זה עוד מעט. I'm not talking about a spirit, I'm talking about joy that is derived from all kinds of physical interaction with physical things. You got yourself a new car, a new home, you go to a party, all these things. אני שמח. אותו דבר, זה לא רוחני. These are not spiritual. Seeing a movie. And therefore, it will depress you even more. Yeah. What will this do as a painkiller? It will dull your senses of pain, and therefore it will lessen the chances of you having itorerut, to be awakened mishamayim, to do the right thing, because you're happy, you joy. Nothing is wrong, everything is okay, everything's so good and nice, it feels comfortable. So it will lessen the chances of a person being mitorer. When a person is being rebuked, criticized, told off, and he's in a good mood, it's not going to work so much. He has to really be shattered, broken a little bit, not too much, for it to work, for it to sink in. Then he hears all these words, and he's overcome by emotion, hopefully, and he changes his ways. But if a person is comfortable, he has all the money, like we say in Hebrew, tzochek al kulam. Some pass him. He doesn't care. He's not worried. So simcha, the not spiritual type of simcha, the regular type of joy that we derive from physical things, sometimes tends to lessen the chance of itorerut, and it acts like a shield. The Rabbi tells in the Midrash, a shield that is oily, that all the arrows that are shot at it fall off easily. They slip off. Throw something at somebody, it doesn't hurt him. It falls off. It slips off. It's oily. In other words, he has a painkiller. In other words, he won't feel the pain. It won't affect him at all. Now let's look at the world at large. There's a lot of people who are umlalim, as we call them in Hebrew. Umlalim means a misfortune. They are they are so, unfortunately,
Pitiful.
bad off, right, in all kinds of ways, not necessarily money. Umlalim. In other words, something has happened to them, something is not right in their lives, something is not good. No children, yes children, but no money, yes money and children, but a terrible marriage. Umlalim, in a very in very sad state. Depression. And you wonder, what are they missing? Because some of these people really have almost everything going for them. Some of them have a lot of things going for them, but they're missing something. And it's not what you think they're missing that would make them happy necessarily. Of course, if somebody doesn't have children, children would make him happy, but that's not it. Many, many times people have everything and they're still not happy. Something is missing in their life. And obviously we know the answer to that, and that is if a life is empty of spirituality, if a life is not connected to Torah and mitzvot, even if somebody is happy, it will not last. That will not bring, in other words, all the physical things in the world, Shlomo Melech says, will not bring you permanent happiness. They can't, because there's so much pain in the world that it will not last even if you do have a lot of happiness. So you have all kinds of individuals who are missing something in their life and they don't even know what they're missing. Now, let's go to the simcha that is permissible and is good and is healthy that we spoke a little bit about in the beginning. Simcha shel mitzvah, simcha shel Torah. If the simcha comes about through the performance of mitzvot, through a close connection to Hashem, through learning Torah, right? That's different. As David HaMelech tells us, that Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Lev, right? The mitzvot of Hashem, the Torah Hashem Temimah Meshivat Nafesh, Edut Hashem Mahkimat Peti. These are all words that describe the tremendous simcha that we derive from doing the mitzvot, from learning Torah. It elevates us. It fills our heart with hope. It elevates the soul. That's something else completely. It's a different kind of an experience. It doesn't mean it will last forever because we have to continue to do it. We have to continue to recharge our batteries. I mean, you're lucky that your car has an alternator. The alternator is recharging the battery as you're driving. Otherwise, the battery cannot last too long without an alternator. It will die. As long as the car is driving, of course, you can drive. But once you stop, you won't be able to start it. You need an alternator to recharge the battery for the battery to stay healthy. So we need a continuous stimulation. We need continuous Torah, obviously, for that kind of a simcha to stick with us. This simcha ruchanit, this spiritual kind of joy, is actually what enables Jews to withstand, to tolerate yisurim, pain. If we wouldn't be able to have that kind of a simcha, if we wouldn't have that kind of an energy, a positive energy within us, pain and tragedy and loss would be a lot more difficult to bear. But that only means for us. In other words, we can bear it. But when we see another Jew in pain, we have to feel bad for him. It doesn't mean, oh, be happy for him. No, that doesn't say that. In other words, there is a time for everything we will see later on. Like kol zman ve'et. Kohelet is going to tell us there's a time for everything. There's a time to be sad. Tisha B'Av is not a time to be happy. So with someone else who has gone through a tremendous tragedy, experienced a loss, you have to feel bad for him, not happy. But in yourself, if you have some kind of yisurim, you can get the strength from the Torah to be able to accept those yisurim mitoch ha'ava. Rabbis explain that this kind of a ashkafa, this kind of a outlook and perspective toward life is what enables tzaddikim to leave this world not depressed and not sad. They see they're going, and they're not upset. Why? Because they realize what they were here for and where they're going. That what they're taking with them is mitzvot and maasim tovim and good deeds, as opposed to reshaim, the wicked, the people who are not focused on the right things. When they leave this world and they've made so much money, acquired so much real estate, so much stock, how does it feel for them to leave everything behind? Especially if they have no kids. You mean Uncle Sam is going to take all of that?
Especially if they can't take it to the grave with them.
Yeah, they can't take it with them.
At the last moment, they can do a great...
They could if they were smart. If they were smart, they would donate it not to an animal hospital, as some people do. Yeah.
They can
That's
donate it.
animal
Everything,
hospital.
anyway they go,
Yeah.
so they can
Some people don't
donate
have the
it.
sechel. They don't have the zechut either to do the right thing with their money. But they feel bad. They actually, many of them feel bad that they work so hard, assuming they worked hard, and here they're leaving it behind. It's a tzaddik, one who has the right hashkafa, right? He looks properly at life. There's nothing for him to fear. All right, let's go on. So what does he tell us so far? That simcha by itself did not do me any good. So tarti belibi limshoch bayayin et besari velibi noeg b'chokhma. I decided to do two things at the same time. I decided to allow myself to enjoy the wine, to enjoy all the good food, and my heart would also be conducted through chokhmah. In other words, I will do both. Enjoy life and study. Maybe if I do both, I'll be okay. Maybe if I do have both of them, I'll be happier. V'lehoz b'sichlut, and to hold and do all the silly things as well, to have fun, enjoy. Until I'm able to figure out which of the two is really better. So I'm going to do both. After all, we only have so many years to live. So what should people do? Where should they devote most of the time? I decided to hold on to both. And let's see what happens. And now he begins to describe to us everything that he did in his life. And this is interesting. You can't imagine what he did not do. Anything you can imagine. So I'm going to read quickly through the various pesukim. Higdalti ma'asai. I did a lot of things, he says. Baniti li batim. I built many homes. Natati li kramim. I planted many vineyards. Asiti li ganot ufardesi, many orchards. Natati bahem etz kol peri. I planted any tree you can imagine, any fruits. Asiti li brechot mayim, pools of water. Lashkot mehem yar tzomech etzim, for irrigation purposes, but also too, I'm sure, for swimming too. Kaniti avadim ushvachot. I acquired many slaves, many maids. Bnei bayit hayali, many helpers at home. Gam mikne bakar vatzon harbe hayali mikol shayu lefanai b'Yerushalayim. I had more cattle, more than anybody else that was there, was before me in Yerushalayim. Now, look at the next one. Kanasti li gam kesef vezahav. I also was able to accumulate silver and gold, gulat melachim v'medinot, all the kinds of things that kings treasure. Asiti li sharim v'sharot. I had singers, male and female. V'ta'anugot b'nei adam shida v'shidot, and all kinds of entertainments, all kinds. And the rabbis tell us in the Midrash that many of these things he was able to acquire from faraway lands through the help of shedim, demons. In other words, he had all the help in the world. You think Federal Express is fast? It gets from here to Israel in 15 hours. A shed does it in a few minutes. There's even a midrash, I think, that every day a bird arrived from Barbary. I'll explain that in a minute. A very big bird, and he had that for dinner or for lunch. It arrived by itself. And Barbary, I think, it's describing the area of what today is Morocco and Algeria. Historically, that was called Barbary. It could be it's another. Huh?
Berber.
Berber, yeah, that's what Berber, exactly, yeah.
אז הוא השתמש בכל מיני כוחות שהם לא מהתורה, טומאה?
לא טומאה, חס ושלום. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways to be able to utilize that which Hashem created in the world, if you know how to, but not through tumah, chas shalom. Yeah. Anyway, what happens is like this. Shlomo Melech was able, therefore, to acquire and to try everything, much more than anybody else did. But he's also saying that even if somebody else was able to get these things, Nichshal. A lot of people were very wealthy. A lot of kings had a lot, but they couldn't control themselves. In other words, they desired more, and because of that, they went to war for more. They did not have a good discipline. So in other words, there were other people who were able to acquire a lot, not as much as him, but Nichshalu. And he was a little bit more careful. Now, he tells us why he was more successful than everybody else. Even though he made mistakes. Okay, he also made mistakes. So he says, even though I did all of this, וגדלתי והוספתי מכל שהיה לפניי בירושלים, and I had more than anybody else in Yerushalayim before me, אף חוכמתי עמדה לי. My chokhmah is what saved me. That's the literal meaning of the pasuk, אף חוכמתי עמדה לי. In other words, what saved him, what helped him to control himself and understand the value of everything was his chokhmah. In other words, he knew the true value of everything and how much to take and how much to use and so forth. Even though he made mistakes too in going against some instructions of the Torah. Another interpretation of what he says here is that Chokhmato Amdali is that despite all my preoccupation and involvement in acquiring all these things, despite the fact that I was busy managing my kingdom, besides the fact that I was so involved in trying out so many things, Chokhmati Amdali, it also means that I did not ignore or push aside learning Torah, learning Chokhmah. Don't think because I got so involved in this and I pursued all of this, in trying to examine them, it took over all my time. No, Chokhmati Amdali, the second pirush would be, I did not ignore my other obligations of learning Chokhmah. However, I like the third interpretation, which is based on Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, on this pasuk. It appears it could very possibly be that he is insinuating here, Chokhmati Amdali, what he's about to say in the next pasuk. In the next pasuk, he says like this: V'chol asher sha'alu einai lo atzalti mehem. Anything that I ever desired, I did not hold myself back. Lo mana'ati et libi mikol simcha. I didn't hold myself back, didn't restrain myself from any form of joy. Ki libi sameach mikol amali. Because I was happy from everything that I was doing, and I therefore continued to pursue them. V'zeh haya chelki mikol amali. These are key words. Zeh haya chelki mikol amali. There are various interpretations. What is he saying? This was chelki mikol amali. From all my endeavors, all the great efforts, this was chelki. Which chelki is he talking about? In other words, he's trying to tell us, after everything that I have done, everything that I've pursued, this was finally the only thing that really I retained and remained with me. So according to Yonatan ben Uziel, he's trying to say that the chokhmah she'amdalo, the chokhmah is what saved him, because it was through chokhmah that he was able to have a chelek to olam haba. In other words, ultimately we all need a ticket to olam haba. You think all the Simcham palaces brought me there, got me there? This I left all behind. This didn't serve me. In other words, chelki mikol amali, from all my amal, from all the hard work, was what? The chokhmah she'amdali. The chokhmah that I learned, the good things that I did, that I taught, all the mitzvot and ma'asim tovim. This is all chelko shel adam. This is what we take with us. This is what amdalo. This is what remained with him. Everything else stayed behind. Why? Because everything else is forgotten. Everything else simply doesn't last forever. This automatically accompanies one when he leaves this world. Okay, if that's the case, that the chokhmah is ma she'amdalo, he continues on. Ufaniti ani bechol ma'asai shasu yadai. I therefore examined, looked around, everything that I ever did. Ube'amal she'amalti la'asot, in all the hard work that I did. He's talking about after having examined, after having built, after having accumulated. And what is my conclusion? Bina kol hevel urot ruach ve'en yitron tachat hashamash. Everything is frustrating, everything is vanities, and there's no benefit to nothing. Now he's going to be upset at chokhmah too, which we're going to see next week. He's going to be upset at even the chokhmah that he has acquired, because he's saying, but wait a minute, I became the biggest chacham, but you know what? Isn't there a saying in English that a live dog is better off than a dead lion? Something like that? What's the saying? What's the pidgam?
Better to be a live dog than to be a dead lion.
Okay, something like that.
Mother?
Yeah. Adif kelev chai mashar yemet.
Dog than a dead lion. Even though a lion is the king of all the
Right.
beasts.
So in other words, what will this chokhmah do for him when he's dead? He and the fool are the same in the grave. So we're going to talk about that next week. No. So here he's telling us how the simcha and all the joy got him nowhere. And now he's very upset that even the chokhmah, in some way, the general wisdom, not the ma'asim, the good deeds that he did, the Torah that he learned, not that, but the general wisdom, knowing everything, what will that serve me in the grave? In the end, is there any difference between a pauper, as they say, and a rich man in the grave? And they're both covered with tachrichim, with shrouds. And in the Yiddish, there's a saying, we don't make pockets on shrouds. Right? You don't take it with you. So, so what's the difference? Where is the difference? Where lies the difference? There's no yitaron. And the reason why there's no yitaron, there's no advantage, because there's no to'elet nitzchit from all these things. The commentaries explain that what he's telling us really is because all these things, as valuable as they are, and they are valuable in some ways, we said it's good to have a nice home, all these things are valuable, but there's no to'elet nitzchit, there's no permanent benefit from these things. So if that's the case, it's a vanity. Vanity, he's trying to discourage us from putting too much emphasis from pursuing these things. Okay, and that, of course, is very depressing. Imagine Shlomo Melech one day sitting down and having Ruach HaKodesh, and he did. Having a mini prophecy of Ruach HaKodesh, he just built a Bet HaMikdash. And he sees in his Ruach HaKodesh, this Bet HaMikdash, which is a beautiful masterpiece, one day will be destroyed. You know how he feels? What am I doing? All this hard work. And you have no idea how much work went into building the Bet HaMikdash. If you read the Tanakh, all the workers that were brought and there was just the incredible amount of work that went into build this beautiful Bet Mikdash, Beit Rishon. And here he has a vision of Ruach HaKodesh that it will be destroyed. So he's talking about that too. He says, this is heaven. All this hard work for nothing? You see what I mean? This is where he's coming from. All the hard work that he put into it will not last. What is the difference, therefore, between me and a poor man, between the smart and the fool, between the rich and the poor? Now this one is funny. This one is a little bit funny. It's also sad. Rich and poor. It says, you know that a rich man will leave everything behind? That we know. But what you don't know, and we'll talk about later when we talk about Mazalot, he speaks about the Mazal, that there's sometimes one of the worst things and the most funniest things is that the rich man actually left his money to the poor man. Have you heard of the story of Yosef Mokir Shabbat? Yeah. Yosef Mokir Shabbat is an incredible story that illustrates this point. And I'll tell it to you briefly what happened. Yosef Mokir Shabbat was a very poor Jew with a family. Poor means that he barely had the needs for the day. But mistapek, he was content with whatever he had. But he had this one custom that he would never give up for no money in the world. When it came to Shabbat, whatever money that he did save, he would, let's use the word splurge, or honor the Shabbat. He didn't mind, he didn't care, even if he was left without any penny after Shabbat. Lichvot Shabbat, he bought, he didn't spare any money. And that is why he received the name Mokir Shabbat. Yosef Mokir, in other words, he gave honor to the Shabbat. This poor, righteous Jew had in his vicinity a neighbor who was very, very wealthy. He was a goy, no children, no wife, stingy and wicked. This stingy, wicked goy one night had a dream. And he was so bothered by the dream that he called on the people that understand and interpret dreams. Can you tell me what the meaning is? What was your dream? He says, I had a dream last night that this neighbor of mine down there, that poor Yosef guy, he's going to inherit all my money. That's a bad dream. I'm going to lose all my money to him, of all people. So what do you say? What does it mean? And they told him, that's exactly what it means. It means that somehow all your fortune will go to him. That's exactly what you saw is pretty much what's going to happen. So what do I do? So it says, listen, you got to somehow put your money into something where he will not be able to get it. What do I do? He says, sell all your money, put it into a gem, into a jewel. You know, like this you won't get your house. So he followed their advice. He put everything into buying a beautiful jewel. Sold everything, was left without anything, took the jewel with him, and went away. Now, how does he preserve the jewel for safekeeping? He decided the safest place to keep a jewel is to tie it into the hat and to wear it wherever he goes. So he had it sewn into his hat. One day he's crossing the bridge, a big wind blows off his hat into the water, into the river. He runs after it, it's too late. So he says to himself, well, at least Yosef won't have it either. Neither will I, neither will him. But Hashem had other plans. The hat, after a couple of days in the water, it rots. So the stitches fell apart, and the gem fell out of the hat, and a big fish swallowed the gem. That day was Friday. The fishermen were having a hard time finding fish. They were running out of time. It's almost Shabbat, and they want to make the day's earnings. Finally, they were able to haul in a big fish. Problem with the big fish is that they want more money for it, and if you're going to charge more money, who's going to pay for it? But they decided their luck. Listen, people may want fish. This is the only fish of the day, but nobody could afford the fish. Nobody wanted to buy the big fish, so they tried one more address. They heard that Yosef buys fish. They come to his door and he says, you know what? I already got my fish for Shabbat. But he saw the size of their fish and says, even though I already have my fish, I will spare no money and buy your big fish too. And he was willing to spend all the money he had left over.
For next challenge, because this week I have my own, and next week I'll buy the
No, he needed some for gefilte fish maybe, and some for whatever. Anyway, he bought the fish, he cut it open, and of course he found the stone. And the rest of the story, he became very wealthy, Baruch Hashem. True story. It's not a made-up story. It's a true story. Sure. Now, do you think that these things don't happen? They happen all the time in different ways. Maybe not with a fish, but with something else. There's all kinds of stories, hundreds of stories, where Hashem, through the Ashgacha of Hashem Yitbarach, an individual was able to find fortune. But anyway, what's the point of the story? Look at the irony, as they say in English, of the situation where a wealthy man left his money not just to the IRS, right, to the government. If of all people, he left it to a poor man, because Hashem wanted it. In other words, we have no control. As much as we think we have control, Hashem decides every penny in other words, what's going to happen to it. Of course, we have some free will to decide what we do with our money, but in the end, it's Hashem's Hashgacha completely. Okay, now that we understand a little bit of what Kohelet is trying to tell us, communicating to us how it's all Evel Avalim, how the pursuit of joy and laughter, as good as they may be, they're only temporary, they don't last. And all the acquisitions of this world you don't take with you, right? The greatest pele, the greatest, therefore, question mark or puzzling thing is, how come people don't realize this? Don't they realize that this is worthless? That it doesn't pay? It's not worth your time. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to be disappointed. Don't. That's the biggest pele of all. You know what this is like? They say in English, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You heard that one? Yeah? You should know better after a while. People make certain mistakes. And in English, there's another saying that says if something is too good to be true, it's not true. Right? Something, did I say it right?
It's probably very true.
Yeah. Imagine somebody who's promising you today, in today's world, I'll give you 10% return on your money interest. What would you say to that? Great! The bank is giving me 0.01. If they're giving.
You can get 1%, online banking.
Yeah, 1% maybe, okay? And he's giving 10%. What are you going to say to that? You may fall for it.
Yeah, but you're going to lose the money because the guy's willing to pay you.
And he's going to give it to you for several months. He's going to give it to you, of course. It can't be true. Yeah. And people still make that mistake. And I don't want to say names in which community that this happened not too long ago. People gave somebody a lot of their money, their life savings, right? You know,
Yeah. Everybody knows.
Yeah, and he can't pay. Now he, of course, is also a victim of the economy. He's not a complete nochel, as we say in Hebrew. He's not a complete con artist. I think so. He's not completely, at least. But what is a man? What is a human being? You know, can he give guarantees? Nothing is guaranteed except for death and taxes, they say. Right? So what? Now let's take a look at the drunk. Do you know what a hangover is in English?
Yeah.
What's a hangover? Anybody know? Can you describe to me a hangover? You may not be able to because hopefully you didn't have one.
You don't know what's going on until you wake up after sober. It takes hours and days.
It's right. A hangover is not only that you don't know. The true symptoms of a hangover are nausea, headaches, right? Just a bad taste of the whole experience that you had that is only occurs after you wake up in the morning. After you become a little bit more sober, do you begin to feel these symptoms. While you're drunk, you're not having these symptoms. That's what they call hangover. I think the Hebrew modern word for it today is called machmoret. But anyway, isn't it interesting or strange that this guy who's drunk has a hangover, goes back to drink? You saw what it does to you. Not only this, it destroyed your family, destroyed your career. I mean, what's going on with you? He's not looking for a solution. Most alcoholics, most drug addicts are not really looking to get out of it. I mean, we know they're addicted, but still, even though you know you're addicted, don't you see you have a problem? So ask for help. Shlomo Melech is telling us all of this from a very good vantage point. And what's that vantage point? He's as we said in the very beginning of the series, he's an observer. For the most part, Kohelet is telling this as an observer. I observed. I experimented. I didn't fall into the traps. I still made mistakes. Shlomo Melech made certain mistakes because, as we say in Hebrew, Ugam hu nigrar. He was also drawn into, you know, all the excitement of the women and the money and the horses and the this. He got a little bit too excited. And he made mistakes. But in general terms, Kohelet is being written as an observer. He says, I'm examining, I'm experimenting. This is a big experiment that I'm making, and I'm letting you know these are the results of the experiment. It's a big sham, let's call it that. It's all hevel havalim, right? And therefore, be careful. And the question is, why don't people see it as him? Obviously, because they're not observers. But still, don't they learn from the mistakes of others? Don't they realize that this is not going to get them anywhere? Don't they know they're going to die anyway? So let's talk logically. Where is the problem of why people are drowning in the sea of vanities and not realizing that they're drowning and missing the boat? And the answer is like this. I think the best explanation for this is what the Kabbalah explains. And with this we'll end. The Kabbalah explains that all the good in the world is mixed with bad. Bechol davar tov nidbak hara. Anything that is good in this world, the ra tries to attach itself to. You know, there are certain fish, like the remora. They attach themselves to other fish, like a piggyback. Have you seen that?
The parasites.
No, not parasites.
They're parasitic fish. They're parasitic.
Oh, in other words, they're eating off the parasites.
Eating off,
yeah, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, eating off or doing something. Have you ever seen a bird in the mouth of an alligator?
Yeah.
A bird in the mouth of an alligator. A live bird. The alligator is not swallowing it. Just picking the worms, like you said, the parasites. And they let him, because they're doing him a favor. And same thing with rhinoceros and all, you know, certain birds come and pick. They catch a ride, I call it. So the Ra catches a ride, attaches itself to the good. That's just the nature of things. That all the good in the world is mixed with Ra. Because the Ra nourishes it from the good, and therefore it attaches itself to good. So in everything that is good or positive in this world, the Ra can and does attach itself. And because of that, people have to realize that it is their job to remove the Ra, to filter out only the good, just like we do when we eat an orange. Hopefully, you're not going to eat the orange with the peel, the klipot. The klipa is a representation of the many klipot that there are in this world that are no good. are there for, they're there for a reason. Hashem wanted to protect the fruit, for you to enjoy it from other animals, from the weather, right? So obviously there's a reason of why he allows the ra to attach itself to the good. But still you have to remove it. You have to distinguish between them. You have to separate them. You can't have them both. The ra is no good. But because the ra is there, that's why people make the mistakes. They don't see the ra because they see, because it's mixed. It's mixed in the tov. You know, it's enjoyable. You know, like they say, the Yetzer Hara tells you, I pay cash. The Yetzer Hara Tov pays you with a check dahui, with a post-dated check, olam haba. I pay cash. You enjoy it. And you do enjoy it. You actually see for a fact that you've just enjoyed something. You build a beautiful home. You put in all kinds of good material. Now you have a big bill to pay, of course. You have your debt or something, but you don't mind because you're enjoying it. As long as you can afford to pay the bills, right? So you do see some good, some benefit, but the problem is that people think that this is the ikar, this is everything there is, this is the most important thing. You know, I got to borrow money to buy this. I got to go into debt to make this big wedding. Oh, sir, why are you going to make a big wedding for? Well, you don't have to invite and feed 500 people for. What for? No, it's the pressure of the community. Pressure of the community, they think it's, therefore it's correct. Pressure means it's good, it's correct, there is pressure. I'm going to allow it to dictate to me how to make my simcha. Even though it's going to cause me pain, debt, you see? But so people make many, many mistakes, only because, obviously, they don't know the balance. So the bottom line here, so far what we see from Kohelet is even though he's telling us that a lot of these good things, fun, laughter, is hevel, the real problem with them is not that they're completely no good. It's that people do not know to the amount, the kamut haretsuya. They do not know the quantity, how much to use of it, how much to devote to them, how much to have and pursue them. That's the problem unless you have Torah. The Torah tells you, listen, husband or wife, you're apart for 11, 12 days a month. Only so much time, right? You eat only so much. Too much eating is no good. Junk food is not good. People are beginning to understand that. Because even that people don't know. One of the biggest problems today in the Western world is called obesity. They gain weight. Why are people gaining weight?
Diabetics.
And diabetics. Why? There are two problems. They don't know what to eat, and they don't know when to eat, and they don't know how much to eat. Somebody watching a movie. I want to have some popcorn, and I want to have some this, and I want to do this, and of course popcorn goes with a cup of beer, and then and all. And we're not talking about drugs right now. I'm talking about regular food that may be a little bit nutritious, a little bit. There's some nutritious. It's not completely fake. It's not artificial, right? Even soya is fake. It's a fake representation of the meat, but at least it's nutritious. It comes from soy, right? So it is nutritious, but it's not good for you to eat.
Oh, no?
No, not soya. Whatever it is, that particular thing that you think is tasty may not be so good for you. And if it's good for you, it may not be good for someone else. So what do you need to do? You need to educate yourself. That's what people are not doing enough. To educate themselves with the right amount. How much do I take from this? This is good. Hashem made this for me. Hashem wants me to be happy, to enjoy myself, to have a nice home, to have a good, comfortable car. Nothing wrong with it. But be careful. Don't overdo it. You know, a rich man yesterday told me, last night, he's very, very wealthy. He drives I think a BMW, real nice. My son just told me, Dad, why don't you get yourself a new car? And I told him, I don't need one. I'm very happy. This child obviously is spoiled. You know, he's younger than his father. His father is a very experienced man. He knows a little bit about managing money. He's totally not spoiled. He grew up not having too much. He earned it the hard way. So he's a little bit more careful. He understands that these things are just a tool to get me to work, to get me places. But I'm going to make this the car. I'm going to get the latest car. I have one. It's just as good and nice and comfortable. But there's a lot of pressure. 0% down, they'll tell you. No payments for the next year, right? Warranties and all these things. They want to make money on your back. So people who are uneducated fall into this trap. Americans are today bad off, now well off, because they are living on credit cards.
America, United States government themselves owe trillions of dollars, and they're paying interest, fortune.
Mismanagement of all this people cannot afford and don't buy it. Manage your life properly. Educate yourself. It pays for a person to look into these things and realize what's good and what's not so good. The only way you can do that is through hitbonenut. Hitbonenut means to reflect on them, to study, to learn Torah. Obviously, for a Jew, we have a tremendous advantage. We have the Torah that directs us, that tells us how much, what yes, what not, when to have it. V'samachta b'chagecha. Holidays are time to celebrate. Shabbat is a time to be with the family. Enjoy yourself. No material activities. Spiritual. The Torah gives us a balance. And this is what people don't have. And this is what Kohelet is going to teach us, that the ultimate key to success in life is having a good balance. Thank you.
So,
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.